Yesterday, can you hear? Is it okay? Yesterday we, amongst other things, talked about the importance of holding the view that our existence as a human being is precious. It's interesting to ponder the result of holding that view. In the context of our meditation practice and the Dharma in general, we sometimes trick ourselves into not doing what we're capable of. And one of the ways that we do that is that we're our own worst critics. We can't quite give ourselves permission, in a sense, to accomplish the result of the practices. So it's my personal opinion that that's because we also mix up our actual accomplishments with our sense of the goodness of being hard on ourselves. And one of the ways to get around that, or you could call it an antidote to that fault, is very short sessions. In a very short session of a few seconds, most everyone can allow themselves the luxury of admitting that they actually had the experience they were looking for. So if you engage in the short sessions of 3 to 10 seconds, let's say, you're almost certain to experience what we were talking about yesterday, that sense of the union of appearance and emptiness. But there's another benefit to the short sessions, which can easily be forgotten. And that is that in contrast to the idea that whenever we sit down to meditate, it has to be 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour, but actually what we want to do is we want to blend our meditation practice with every experience we have. That's difficult to do if we call 20 minutes a short session. So what are we doing then when we're getting up and walking to the bathroom? We have the sense that you can't meditate in that time because it's too short. You walk by the window, you stop, you look out the window. But since you're not sitting down with your legs crossed, can't be meditation. So this is a trick that we play on ourselves actually. It's very useful to engage in those few seconds, very short meditation session, where you bring your awareness to an experience which, unless you're dead, you're always having some experience. So we can bring our awareness to whatever that experience is, whether it's a physical sensation, a mental sensation, an emotional sensation, whatever it is, for just a few seconds. You pass by the window, you look out the window, and you just rest your awareness on the experience that's happening in that moment for just a few seconds, and then you let it go. Take a few more steps, engage in whatever you're doing, try to find 3 or 4 dozen times in the day when you can stop for just a few seconds. 3 seconds is pretty easy. Almost everyone can be successful at a stable 3-second meditation. It's just a winner. You know, like you can't, it's almost difficult to not succeed. The problem then is we don't believe it. We don't give it any credibility. It was too short somehow. When actually, we're looking for an experience that does not have a time frame. And you're as likely to have it in a 3-second period as you are in a 30-minute period. In fact, more in the 3-second period. So gradually then, we get used to that little short session, and gradually then we also have the experience of, I only intended for 3 to 10 seconds, but actually it was 20 seconds. And then sometimes it's half a minute. So gradually we see that it's like it just comes naturally. It's not something that we accomplish through effort, because effort actually doesn't pay a dividend in this case. We need to put the effort into getting to the place where we're willing to do a very short session. But during the session, it really must be effortless. There's no benefit to the effort. It's kind of like if you ski, you know, you make a lot of effort, climb up the hill. But once you go over the top of the hill, it's not effort that makes it work. It's something else. which is not the same as the effort of climbing the hill. So in this case, we're always in a place. You're talking to somebody. When you're talking to somebody, there's a moment when you're talking, and then there's a moment when they're talking. When they're talking, you can do a 3 or 4 second meditation. You're far less likely to have a contrary opinion to what they're expressing. Far more interesting to hear their opinion, which otherwise would be totally boring. They think you're really interested, which is really helpful. Our experience, when we take it into chunks like that, we can see that actually that's how our experience normally unfolds anyway, in very short little chunks. And we kind of like weave them together during the day into something which is a larger story at some point during the day. Then we run into somebody and we have a long story to tell, but it's actually a series of very short, almost irrelevant scenarios. It's extremely helpful beyond the boundaries of just simple shamatha, the ability to place our awareness on our experience, not just our inanimate object, but our experience is so helpful and so easy to do. There's a saying that you can find in almost any authentic Dharma book, which will be, it's called one of the 4 faults of Mahamudra. So Mahamudra, which is the highest teaching and the highest accomplishment, is somewhat humorously often described as the 4 faults of Mahamudra. It's not that the Mahamudra has a fault, it's that we cannot quite allow ourselves to understand it. Because if we understand it, then we think that we've misunderstood it. And then we've misunderstood it, we feel like we've missed it, and we can't quite find what it was we were supposed to get because we already got it. And the result is that we put the book aside and decide this is too much for me. When fundamentally, one of the primary 4 faults is, it was so easy you couldn't believe it. That is, in the Shankpa tradition, one of the 4 highest, most important teachings. It was so easy you couldn't believe it. And so you just put it aside. Which is unfortunate. So I think it's really important to work with these small chunks over and over until it becomes automatic. If you sit down to eat, you immediately find that there's a moment to rest your awareness on an experience. You eat your food, there's a dozen moments to rest your awareness on that. You're in the middle of a conversation, the other person is talking, you're just present. And when it's done, you may not have so much to say. So, rather than think that it's important to have the long periods and be able to sit for long periods of time, it actually isn't like that. You're more likely to reach the place where you're more commonly just present with whatever is happening by engaging in many short sessions. So it's really not something to consider that's a beginning baby kind of thing. Because I can't do the long session, I do the short session, then you trick yourself into feeling like you can never do the long session, and this short session actually isn't worth much. And we have the thing of our precious human existence, which is absolutely critical. So in addition to the short sessions, you can also take the intention to remind yourself that you're alive, you're a human being, you have more than enough intelligence, more than enough awareness to engage in the Dharma, and that provides you with the precious opportunity. And then the good news is, break it up into really short sessions, which is actually how we experience things, if you look. You don't experience a 20-minute thing when you stand by the window and look out and gaze at the tent outside or something. This is not a 20-minute event. This is usually a 20-second event. And we had an opportunity to just rest our awareness there on the experience of looking at the white tent, watching our mind raise questions and opinions and judgments and all of that, and it's actually glorious. So let's have another session, and we'll start again with the refuge and bodhicitta prayer together. Let's also, just for a moment, think a moment about that bodhicitta. Bodhicitta can also be reduced to something which is profound and easy to grasp. Bodhicitta is, we normally call it awakening mind. Most minds are not awakening. We might just start with that point. Most of them are sleeping. And sleepwalking, you might say. We want to wake up, and the waking up in this case means recognizing the nature of mind itself. That's all. Just recognize the single most important thing that you have, and it's the mind. But it's not awake. We don't recognize the nature of that mind, and so we live in a state of confusion. So what we want to do is, bodhicitta is the aspiration to wake up, but not just to wake up so that I'll be awake. It's to wake up so that I'll be able to bring benefit to others. Because without that wish, the whole thing has no benefit, even to the person who has the awakening mind. If you look at it long enough and hard enough, that all becomes clear. And the original recognition that having a precious human existence is absolutely critical. We all have it. So when we give rise to the aspiration to benefit others, we're aspiring not only to wake up, but to wake up in order to bring benefit to others. You could recite that to yourself every time you stop and do a 3 to 10 second meditation. Just remind yourself, what's precious is that I am able to aspire to attain enlightenment, to wake up, and I am able to hold the aspiration to benefit others. Finished. It's like conversations. We often have conversations that are 10 times longer than they need to be because we can't stop. And in this case, it's important at the end of a meditation session to know when to end it, because we want to end it on a good note. So if we were able to be present while we were thinking about waking up, the awakening mind, the aspiration to wake up, and then we have this aspiration to bring benefit to others, in that moment it's time, just let go. Let it go. The more you elaborate it, the worse it gets. Okay, we'll start with refuge and bodhicitta 3 times together, and then and take the meditation where you can. The summit of enlightenment is reached, I and all beings. Refuge to the sources of true refuge. I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding in order to release all beings from their and establish them in lasting peace and happiness. Until the summit of enlightenment is reached, I and all beings refuge to the sources of true refuge. I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding in order to release all beings from their particular suffering and establish them in lasting peace and happiness. Until the summit of enlightenment is reached, I and all beings go for refuge to the sources of true refuge. I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding in order to release all beings from their particular suffering and establish them in lasting peace and happiness. you need another stretch break, now's a good time.